Welcome to Coffee, Coaching, and Callings, a live podcast created for coaches, leaders, and helping professionals that are on a mission to lead a successful and heart-centered life. Your hosts today are myself, Laurel Elders, and Michael Tucker of the Institute for Integrative Intelligence, where it's our mission to elevate human potential through the art and the science of masterful, heart-driven coaching. Today's podcast will be focusing on following a calling. And we have with us today, Melanie DewBerry. Melanie, welcome. I'm so excited to have you today.
I'm so honored, Laurel. Michael, thank you for having me.
A little bit about Melanie. She is a ceremonialist, poet, speaker, and Hay House author. The Power of Naming is her book. If you would like to check that out, I'll also put it in the, I'll post the link below if you are interested. She creates ceremonies for individuals and organizations on the threshold of belonging, becoming, and evolving. And that is just a very small snapshot of Melanie's really rich background. So I'm going to be posting her full bio after today's episode so that you can connect with her work if it's something that is really calling to you. And Melanie, I have to start off by saying, you have been such a lantern to me in my own self-awareness journey. Wow. And I just feel so honored to have learned from you. And you just held up such a powerful mirror for me in the naming work that we did together. And I'm just curious to learn more about, and if you can share with the audience, what called you into the work that you're now doing?
Wow. First of all, what an honoring. Thank you. I'm working on receiving, so thank you. I'll just say thank you so much for the way you spoke. It's very, very generous. I'm trying to decide which piece to give, but I'll tell you this part, which I may have told you when we worked together. I don't know. I'm in the indigenous world, and one of the ceremonies we have is called oh my God, my brain, the Vision Quest. And so the Vision Quest is an opportunity to be alone and to be with Creator, the divine, whatever you want to call that, and to have that alone time to listen and to ask for your vision. And when you do it, it's up on a hill usually, or in a cave or in a sweat lodge, and you're there by yourself for 4 days and 4 nights without food or water. And you're there just to pray and to ask for the vision. And on the third Vision Quest, you do it 4 times in a row, 4 years. On my third Vision Quest, on my third day, the thunder beings came to me. And the funny thing is, I never even questioned what was happening. Like, is this real? I'm like, oh, look, the thunder beings. And they said, we want you to come with us to these 2 worlds. And the first world, it was like gray, and the world was crumbling, and elders were neglected, and children were being abused. And you could feel the desperation of it. I actually get a little tender just thinking about it. And then they took me out of that world, and they took me to this beautiful world where the grass was verdant green, and the elders were sitting under trees teaching the children. They were well fed, the elders were cared for, the land was beautiful and responding to our love of it. And then we came out of that one, and they said, so which world do you want to live in? I'm like, are you for real? Like, the world of beauty. And they said, okay, go back to the world of chaos and create this. And then I was really angry for the rest of my time on that hill, because I thought, how am I going to do that? And then I heard, we will send help. You are part of that help. So I knew in that moment, I wasn't coaching at that time. This is way before I started my coaching career, that I was being called to do something that was more aligned with my soul and my spirit than it would be with, kind of like the right brain world or the left brain world. I get those messed up. And so I just had to surrender to that. And I said, okay, show me. I'm listening. It took a few years for it to download, but so that's how I got into it. Did I answer your question?
Yes. What a powerful story. It reminds me of the Course in Miracles says, you've taught what you are, but you have yet to allow what you are to teach you. And It's interesting as you're sharing that. I don't think many of us are born knowing exactly what we are. Like we say, oh, I'm human, but it's also connected to what we are capable of. And I see people can confuse this thinking, think they're in a crisis of knowing who we are versus what we are, what we're capable of.
Yeah, and I totally support the reading of the Course in Miracles. I think that helps people seat them, and then set them in what's relevant and how to know. I love that you brought up the Course in Miracles. I'm a big fan of that work.
Were you raised with the spiritual perspective, or how did this enter your world?
No, I think no, I wasn't raised with it specifically. I grew up in an Episcopalian household, and we would go to church, and I just immediately, at a very young age, 5, 6, I just loved God. I wasn't so much the church. I'm not anti-church, whatever works for you. But I loved being there. I felt the energy of some deep, profound love. I didn't have words for it as a child. I just knew, like some kids are like, I don't want to go. I don't know. I was like, yeah, let's go. And I think part of it also happened to do had to deal with who was standing in front of us, who was the priest at the moment. And I was fortunate to have several times very loving, beautiful human beings. And I actually thought one of my goals as a child was I wanted to be the first female Episcopalian priest. And so I set my path on that. And then of course that changed. But, I got my goal confused in a way with, I think I just wanted to honor God, but I also I was looking at all these men and going, what about us? But things change, and I'm still in line with Creator. And so, but the goal of what I was going to be or become shifted, but that was how I started.
Oh, go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very powerful to hear you talk about this connection very early on in your life to spirit, to source. And then as you have moved into the work that you're doing now, how would you even define the work that you do now?
I thought we talked about this, Michael, that you weren't going to ask me hard questions. How do I define this work? So my work is always to support people experience themselves as source embodied life, the life of the divine within. And I think we forget that because we're taught to forget it, even if we're religious or going to church or, whatever, going to ceremony, we forget it because the world, in a way, the world in North America is designed on purpose to help us forget. So we'll be great worker bees. We study, we go to school for the purpose of attending to somebody else's wealth rather than attending to our soul. So my work is to always help people remember who they are, to kind of live in that alignment, and whatever I do. Am I answering your question again? I keep asking those questions.
You did answer my question, and I have a follow-on question for you.
Okay.
So as you're working with folks and you're supporting them and living in alignment with who they are, how would you describe the experience that people have, the journey that they have with you?
Oh, wow. I don't, so I'm going to take myself out of the equation. I know I'm working with them, but I'll describe what I experience is that, first of all, anybody who works with me already has the yearning, which means they're already aligned in some way. If you yearn for something, you're already aligned, even if you don't experience it. And so if they're yearning and they're aligned, then all it takes is, a little bit of, look here, look here, and look here consistently, or, whatever. I don't have a pattern, like here's what we do, But if I hear the yearning is real, then I know that I can help them expose themselves to that reality and then seat them in what seat them in the experience that I'm already hearing and seeing. So I'm not sure if I'm really clear about that, about I'm saying that well, but if you're coming, then you're here. You're not, it's not even ready. You're already here. You just don't see it. And so my job is just to take the little tissue and clear the mirror. You're just not seeing it. And then let's actually have you line up and feel into the experience that is so very present to everybody else, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Melanie.
Oh, you're welcome, Mr. Michael.
Do you see that yearning as a calling?
What journey? This journey?
The yearning?
Oh, the yearning as a calling for others? For those people that come to, I do. If you're coming to me because you want to align yourself, there's something to align yourself with the divine. There is something you're hearing, and you might have it a little bit turned down or muted. And that also is often because of the outside influences. Sometimes we don't trust what we hear. And so we seek someone out to support us. Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm not, I've been in this business. I'm still out there getting support, right? And so we don't necessarily trust it, or we don't hear it well, or we deny it, or we deny ourselves, most importantly. Like, well, there's that inner conversation that's not heard that everybody else can hear, that we're displaying, like, am I worthy? Is this, can I do this? There's that fear-based conversation. And so, my work is not to eliminate the fear, but for you to hear it and put it in its proper perspective so that the truth has the overreaching access to you and not the fear. The fear might always be there, but the more you align yourself with the truth, the less your fear gets your attention.
That's a really good way to put it.
Thank you.
I argued with my calling.
What do you say?
I don't have time for that. I'm not the right person, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, right. And then do you still argue, or is this present tense?
No, this was when it first started really tapping on the shoulder, and I was willing to listen more and more, but still, yeah.
I think that's normal, though. I think, when you're called to something that is not something that you learned in school, or that someone, taught you, I think that's a normal response to go like, well, who am I? No, I can't do that. Me too. I was like on that hill. I was like, no, I can't. I was angry that third day. I'm like, who are you to ask me? I am nobody. I am nobody. And then that's when they said the next day we'll send help. And I'm like, well, yeah, like a whole truckload. Of course, I think that's normal. And I think even that conversation of doubt, like, I don't know what you're talking about, I can't do that, is necessary. We have to have that out loud so we can almost hear how we're fighting against our own nature. And then at some point, we just give in. If not everybody, but I think at some point we just go, okay, I'm tired of fighting. Just tell me what to do. All right. Not everybody. Some people give into the fear, which is heartbreaking for me. Heartbreaking.
Yeah, fear can be a big thing. And, speaking of fear, when maybe you could talk a little bit about your background and your heritage, because you said I'm nobody, and I'm just itching to hear how that may have affected your calling experience and your journey so far.
Wait, the fact that I'm nobody, or or how do you want me to
Yeah.
say?
So you said when you received this calling, you were saying to yourself, I'm nobody. And I'm curious about how that thought even produced itself, and if maybe your background or your heritage has something to do with it, and if it has something to do with the fact that you did accept this.
Yeah, wow, that's Michael, we're gonna have to talk about these big questions when we get off this call. Yeah, so I'm like 50% African American, 40% Irish, and a wee bit of Native American, particularly Choctaw, Cherokee. Very hard to track because records were not kept on us. So I'm not a card carrying person. I don't have blood quantum information. And before I was even allowed to be a part of the Native American ceremonial world, my elder, who was a tough nut, George was tough. He insisted on meeting my family, my mom, and without me. And he says, you're not going to be sweating with a sweat lodge until I meet your family. He let me sweat a couple times. He goes, now I need to meet your family. And so I asked my mom, will you talk to this guy? And he's like, okay. And he was with her the whole day. I was not allowed. I don't know what happened. I still don't know what happened. But then he came and he spoke to me. He goes, okay, you belong. You belong. And brought me into this path. He was a Tlingit, he still is, he's still alive, a Tlingit elder. And he brought me into this path. And I figure if it's good enough for George, it ought to be good enough for everybody else, because he is tough. He does not say yes to anybody and everybody. So let me see if I'm answering your question. And tell me, and you can string me back in if I'm not, Michael. I will say that being again in the ceremonial world, initially the Inipi, the sweat lodge, again, I had that same experience of when I was in church, that I could feel the essence of Creator. I felt that I was in the midst of something beautiful. It often made me cry. It was so humbling. And my intuition, which had always been a part of me, started to really come alive then. I mean, it had always been there, even as a child. I remember saying things to my parents as a child, and they'd be like, what? I'm like, yeah, I don't know either. I don't know what that, nobody told me what that was. And so I didn't pay much attention to it. But when it just started coming and I would hear things for people as I walk out the street, I'm like, okay, you crazy, but go ahead and say this. And then I just started accepting it. Now, then you asked me, how did I get into, where was the segue from that into my work?
No, it's totally perfect. I mean, I appreciate everything that you're sharing. I mean, what you're talking about is you're talking about your culture, and you're talking about how it's nurtured this journey for you. And how have you evolved in this journey, in this calling?
Oh, wow. Surrender. Real surrender. I mean, honestly, a lot of it's been beyond my control. So the segue to that situation with George, I was one of his elders for a long time. I mean, not elder, sorry, student. He was my elder. And he took me on, was it my first vision quest here in Northern California? And George was tough. I mean, he's a different man now. As we age, we tend to soften. And so now he's a soft, sweet, kind man, but he was tough. And so I was sitting there for 4 days, and I just got the message, very clear that he was not supposed to be my teacher. I had a lot of anger issues when I met him. I was in my early 30s. I was angry about living in this world and being tortured because I was African-American. I had a lot of anger issues. And while the ceremonial world was helping me release them, George also had anger issues. He would tell you this too. I'm not speaking behind his back. He knows. He just enlarged my own issues. And so when I came off the hill, we go back into the sweat lodge, we smoke the pipe, we, talk about the vision. And I said, I don't want to tell you this, but they were very clear that I'm not supposed to be your student anymore. And when you commit to an elder, they ask you for a time commitment. My commitment with him was 4 years. And I think we were barely in 2 years. And he was really angry. And so it also happened to be that I was sitting in a patch of poison oak. And so I was in the sweat lodge and the poison oak just went boom. So that gave me the opportunity not to sweat with anybody for a couple of weeks while I healed, right? All this it doesn't look like a blessing, but it is. So it kept me away from them. And over that time, he got angrier and angrier. And he told the other people in the circle, if you speak to her, you're out. She's out. You're never, ever to talk to her. So I lost my entire community in a matter of 2 weeks. At the same time, I lost my job. My boss was a huge racist. They brought in an African-American consultant, and she got me a great package. And I got out of there. And so all I had was this 500-foot studio in the Mission District of San Francisco. I had to save the money because I didn't know how long I was going to be unemployed. I went nowhere. And all I did was pray all day long. And I was alone. And it was from that deep place of despair in a way, that and being alone with just having the conversation with the Divine Mother, Creator, God, whatever the words are. I had to put my trust into the unseen. And it said, it led me to a different place. I don't really know how to talk about it, but everybody has their path. And I feel like in almost everybody's path, there is that place where we just hit rock bottom and we're doing great. And we might do it several times in our lives. And it's hard. And it's easy for me to say, trust it. We don't, it's painful. We don't know how we're going to get out, but it led me to, eventually I came back out into the Native world and was going to another ceremony, a Sundance. I met a new elder. He kind of picked me up and scooped me up, and Pablo and Andrea from New Mexico. And I had been with them ever since. And that was over 30 years ago. So am I answering? I don't know. I keep asking. I don't know if I remember ever asked, but.
Yeah, in a nutshell, what you said is sometimes the calling is hard.
It is really. Our ego is so attached to being present with us. And I'm not saying we have to destroy the ego, but when it is there. And so that will make it hard. The ego of ourselves, the ego of other people, the ego of, the world, the overculture's constant conversation about how we should be and interceding on what the beloved is saying to us. I'm like, yeah, there's that conversation around the overculture, but my conversation will have you sit in joy and faith and alignment. And yes, it will be hard, but there's trust. So there's a lot of multiple conversations, and yeah, it is hard.
What message do you have for somebody that is feeling called and just really on the fence about trust or just experiencing that fear?
Ooh, also big questions. You're not gonna be able to do this by yourself. I mean, we're not meant to be alone. We're not on a planet with billions of people for you to try to figure this out by yourself. So there are lots of paths, but go get the support, whether it is friends or reading or listening to something or attending something. And when you're in relationship to those other bodies, whether it's a body of work or a person or an event, always don't give yourself over to the event. Listen to what aligns and leave everything else, and then go back into something else. You're not going to do this alone, ever, even with the almighty beloved Mother Creator God. It's right there. You're never going to be able to do this all alone. So ask for help. You may not know what kind of help you need. It might just be, hold me while I step into this. See me, tell me I'm worthy of being this. Even if I don't believe you, keep telling me. Ask for what you need. It's hard work. And don't give up for very long. If you give up, come back. Don't be ashamed of giving up. Don't be ashamed of being afraid. We're all afraid. And by the way, we're all making it up as we go. We might have a plan, but even in that plan, we are all making it up as it goes. No one has this figured out. We might have a moment of time figured out, but what the next moment's going to bring, what the next year, what the next experience, and then life comes and slams you or opens up, we're all making it up. So just be generous to yourself, be kind, ask for the help, and then be willing to receive it.
I love, one thing I've learned personally is just more about the inner compass that we all have.
Yeah.
Even if someone's an atheist, they don't believe, it's just so fascinating how connected we are. And research has shown how connected we are energetically to all that is quantum physics, right? And so we have this inner GPS, and yet there's all these distractions that are pulling us. And so taking that time to go in, and I love what you said about just looking, is this aligned? Is this not aligned? To follow.
Yeah, I mean, it really does take that kind of, like, if you've ever seen those blinder things on horses, it's like, you just have to do this. And there'll be, I've had people go, oh, I'm attracted to a lot of different things. I'm like, well, look for the constant theme among them, because you can't do 10 things at the same time. So look for the constant theme and then focus. And then if something is not aligned with the theme, even if it's interesting, write it down and leave it there and see if it's part of the theme, or if it's just something the shiny object trying to take you away. And that ain't, by that shiny object stuff, that's just fear. That's also fear. Let me be distracted so that I can do this. Not do this, really.
Yeah, I'm thinking also of some of the myths, I think, that have come up for people around callings, like, oh, that's just fluff, or I don't have time for that, I have to actually make a living, or those myths. Any thoughts on some myths that you've come across?
Oh, my own, probably, like, who am I? How is this going to happen? I need to earn money. Boy, that need to earn money stuff that they put, oh my God, that voice is so loud. And I'm not saying that we don't need income, because everything in my world has been, the house needs to be paid for, the insurance, food. I understand that. And so get those basic needs covered. If you got to go do your thing, go do that thing. But don't let go of the purpose. That's the thing that just will kind of calm you down. But if you're using that as an excuse not to honor the calling, then I'm here to tell you, you're using that as an excuse to not to honor the calling. So, how do I want to say this? So, you're not necessarily being asked to give away everything, to go live a nunnery, to not, to live a life of poverty. Some people might, and they're going to make peace with that and do that. That no one's asking you to be barren and struggle. And this is where the faith of not just the calling, but the faith of going against the overculture's conversation about money and working a certain way, that money comes from working like this, whether it's the 9 to 5, which I'm not making wrong, or the hustle. And I want to say a word about hustle. I understand the relevant of hustle, the relevant of doing hustle. And I think hustle is great when you're younger for a short period of time, but you will exhaust your very being if you think that it's about a hustle. That's not the energy of a calling. You might have to work fast in some moments, but if you are hustling, then you are part of a different mindset as a way. You might have a moment of hustling, but if a continuation of that is going to put you on the side of the ego, of having and doing, and you will no longer be aligned with your calling. It'll all be about being an influencer, feeling relevant, having that busy badge, all that conversation from the older culture that names you as worthy if you do it like this.
You just hit on something so big, Melanie, and you talked about the energy of a calling. it sounds like even when you said that, I could really sense that there was a frequency, a tone that goes with this calling. Could you say a little bit more about that for our listeners?
Wow. So the energy of it is, first of all, here's what I want everyone to know. You are going to know you are called instantly, and then the fear is going to come up almost as instantly, simultaneously. For most of us, some people aren't going to have fear. They're going to be elated. They might have fear down the road, or maybe no fear. I've not met anybody like that, but if you are like that, please come teach me, because I want to learn to be like that. But immediately you will be like a whole new breath, and you're like, whoa. Wow. And you'll feel the magnificence, your own in alignment of that magnificence. And then of course the fear comes in, but you will know. You will not have that experience without knowing it was meant for you. You can deny it. And that's really all I can say about it. I don't know. There might be somebody else who's able to speak to that better. But if you have the experience, if you wake up, if you're walking down the street and something speaks to you, if you're having a dream, if you're having a piece of cheesecake and going, oh my God, I know how to make this 20 times better, not poo-pooing the other person, but I know how to like really do this cheesecake. That is that moment. And then you have to trust that moment. Don't push it away. Don't push it, even when fear comes. I remember when I was in the coaching field, I literally, that's when The Sopranos were big, the TV show The Sopranos, which by the way scared the hoo-hoo out of me. But and I had a dream that I was in this tub, and the Sopranos were in my bathroom about to kill me. And I said, you can't kill me. I have to produce the first coaching magazine ever. And I woke up and I wrote, this is before like Facebook and all that. Imagine that, y'all, before Facebook. And I wrote to all my coaching colleagues, because there were 300 of them, I think, or something like that, at the coaching institute I worked for. And I said, I'm going to start their first coaching magazine ever. And I wrote to them so that they would hold me accountable. I knew I had to spit it out, because if I didn't spit it out on email at that time, I knew I'd backpedal. I have all these reasons, like I don't know how to do a magazine. I don't even like to write, and so I spit it out, and then it forced, I knew I'd be forced to do it. So if you're having that experience, and you are having that experience, we're all having that experience, you're just gonna have to surrender to it, and put on what I call your big girl panties, put on diapers, adult diapers if you have to, I'm serious, because it takes, it's going to take all of you. But the ride is fun, even with the scary, even with the down parts. The more you let it take you, the more available you are to your highest self, and seeing all the different ways in which truth and beauty and love will expand you and expand you. And the more they expand you, the more you want to be expanded, and the more expansiveness you have to give.
Yeah, so rich, so much there.
Thank you. And I'm still scared. I'm doing this ceremonial work, which we're going to talk about in another session. And I'm not as scared today as I was 3 days ago or a week ago, but it took me 2 years, 3 years, really. I sat out in my backyard. I have this little wooden bench and this lemon tree, and I would sit every day. And I heard the calling to do ceremonial work as a, slightly indigenous person. And it scared me. They'll think I'm a fake. I don't want to disrupt their culture. I had all these conversations, and the lemon tree just kept saying, I call the lemon tree mother, and they're just like, okay, and they're like, we're just going to take it all in, and they didn't change the conversation. I was very, very frightened, and I'm still, tippy-toeing into it, but I'm more confirmed in it than I am scared. But it took me 3 years to go, okay. They're like, we'll just wait as long as you want to wait. The truth is, if you don't do it, Melanie, somebody else will, because that's how it works. It has to be done. So you can do it, or you can sit here and cry about it for 3 more years if you want. I'm like, when they said that, I'm like, okay, here I go. Don't take it away, don't take away from me. So I'm still get scared. I don't have it all figured out. That's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talked about your time with the lemon tree there. And you mentioned earlier, you talked about a pipe, and I'm wondering what role plants might play in this ceremonial work.
It's all about the natural world.
Mm,
I only hold ceremony out in the natural world. It's
mm,
never in a building. I mean, buildings are the things that we do in the moment, but if you want to be alive, you have to commune with nature, because they're constantly streaming the story of and the song of beauty, truth, and love to us. They're constantly singing it to us. And we only will hear it. That's why we get that full feeling when we're out in nature, when we're taking that hike, when we're laying on the beach, when we're, swimming down the river, when we're, whatever, fishing, whatever it is. There's that place you felt it, right, Michael? You felt it, right, Laurel?
Oh,
all
Yeah.
the
yeah.
time.
Like when it's gone.
Pardon?
I feel it when it's gone, when it's not
Yes.
present.
So when you're afraid, when you're skeptical, when you don't know, go out in nature. If it's raining, put on a freaking raincoat. One of the things my uncle Pablo taught me as a young person, because I would always come up, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm afraid. Poor guy, he was so patient with me. He would say, okay, go get your tobacco. Go get your tobacco and go out into the Star Nation every night and offer that Star Nation tobacco and say a prayer and ask for help. I'm like, putting me out in nature every night, like, get over yourself. Go speak with the element, and then shut up and let them talk and listen. And that was one of the biggest teachings, the simple little act of offering the tobacco and just listening.
Wow.
I also appreciate what you said about sometimes it's a cheesecake calling, right? It's not always this major, it could just be something simple. And so I wonder how many people might be overlooking, like, or poo-pooing, like, oh no,
That's
not,
too small.
yeah. When I
Yeah.
took on a perspective once of when I go to the grocery store, do I feel called to smile at somebody that might be having a bad day, right? They can be so small too, our calling.
Absolutely. You're probably an empath, and you probably feel their need. And so you speak, you answer the need, which is so beautiful. Not a lot of us will do that when, like, we feel awkward, and it's not about how they respond. It's not about their response. It's about what you experienced, which is beautiful. And I think, sometimes like everybody else, I'm on Instagram or whatever, and I watch those little things of, like, teachers, telling their students, or asking their students, who do you want to be today? Or what is up with you? And who are you? I'm awesome. I'm magnificent. And that's a calling for a teacher to embed that in a child, to remind them again every single day when they line up for class, to say who they are in the world. I'm magnificent. I'm wonderful. I am intelligent. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't get that when I went to school. You know what I mean? It's like, I didn't get that from my teachers. To have someone do that at age 4, 5, 15, 20. Oh my God, that's a calling.
So we're going to be having a part 2 of this conversation. Melanie, would you share a little bit more about what we're going to be, what's going to be involved in our follow-up?
Thank you, Laurel and Michael. So what I want to do next time is I want to bring you into the world of ceremonial work. I want to talk a little bit about it, and then I want to give you an experience of it. So if you're coming to that call, come ready to belong to something bigger than any of us, but is made from all of us. And the power of ceremony, which for me has been belonging, true belonging. Because one of the beautiful things about circling up in my world, when we're called to circle up for somebody who's on the threshold of becoming, is it doesn't matter if we're the same or if we like each other, the call has been made. I circle up for that soul of that person completely, always. And that's true belonging. And I want to offer that to your audience.
Beautiful. I'm so excited. So those of you that are tuning in today and would like to join that conversation, stay tuned. I will be posting details. And Melanie, Michael, thank you so much for today's conversation. And thank you to those that are joining us. We really hope that these messages have been a lantern to you on your path as you expand your positive impact as a coach, leader, or helping professional. If you'd like to join the conversation further, please tune in to integrativeintelligence.global.